Hey guys, welcome back to our discovery of ancient Greece. Okay, so where we left off, we said that the Persian Wars ended because the Persian army focused on Greece for so long. And we said they focused on Greece for so long that they were no longer able to protect their boundaries. And we said a new guy from Macedonia named Alexander the Great is going to take advantage of this. And what he's going to do, okay, is attack the Persian Empire and take over. Okay, so the Persian Empire now falls under Alexander the Great's rule. Okay, and Greece is going to kind of go back to their normal state of affairs. So he said during this time, Athens is going to emerge as the leader of Greece because of all the things that they did during the Persian Wars, including bringing everybody together to fight off their enemy, creating a plan in which they were able to essentially hold on to their land. So Athens is going to emerge as the number one city-state in Greece. So he said that Athens during this time, okay, was led by a guy named Pericles. And Pericles is going to be a really good leader, and he's going to make Athens very democratic. So we left off talking about the direct democracy in Athens, and we said that direct democracy in Athens worked because their population was relatively small in order for that to happen. Okay, so we said that about 6,000 male citizens about every 10 days would meet and pass laws and elect officials and so on. Okay, as we continue on with Pericles, okay, during his 30-year rule, okay, he's going to make Athens more democratic. One of the things that Pericles did, that he's going to appoint people in the government, not based on class. So remember they have upper class, middle class, low class. Okay, Pericles is going to be smart enough to look past that. Even though you're an upper class person, that might not mean that you have all the skills needed to be a good official. Okay, maybe a middle class person, even though they're not high in society, all right, might have a better skill base than that upper class person. Since he was able to look past those items, is going to allow a variety of people into the government who supported a variety of people in the city. So a lot of people felt good under the direct democracy because their officials came from the same class that they did. Pericles also acknowledged that learning was very important. He still focused on education. He thought art was important, and so on. So after the Persian Wars, remember Athens was burned. Okay, Pericles is the new leader. So what he's going to do is hire those poor people, and they're going to rebuild it even more beautiful than it was before. They built new temples, they had statues, and so on. All right, he supported writers, he supported teachers, okay, so he put money towards these items to make Greece have a great society, okay, in Athens. He also hired a group of people known as a philosopher. So if we look at philosophers, what they're going to do is really learn as much as they can. So they're people who learn as much as they can about the area that they live in or a different area, and then they reflect back, okay, so a philosopher is going to look at the problems in the city, and instead of dealing with them, they're going to say, well, how can we fix this, or how can we prevent war in the future? So they're the great thinkers. And Pericles is going to say, well, I might be the leader and I'm doing a great job, but I don't have all the answers. So what he's going to do is actually hire on some of these philosophers to help him rule his government. So he is looking a little bit of the big picture, which made him a great leader. Okay, so with these characteristics, Athens is going to be like the center of knowledge. People are going to go to Athens because of their education, to learn and so forth. So they are going to have a great number of people wanting to move into their area. Okay, Athens at this time is going to be known as the School of Greece, just because they had such a high priority on education in comparison to some of the other city-states. Okay, so if we look at Athens and we look at the life there, okay, Athens is going to be the largest city-state at this time. Most of the men, and we talked a lot about this before, were those middle-class people. Okay, they're going to be farmers and artisans and merchants. Okay, most of them did most of their work in the morning. The afternoon was for relaxing, exercising, education, and so on. Usually if you were an upper class person at night, they would gather together, they would talk politics and philosophies and so on. Women, we talked about this as well, were very traditional. They focused on homes and families. So girls at this time usually married at a pretty young age, usually about mid-teen, so 14, 15, pretty common for an Athenian woman to get married, okay, which we think is really odd because I would never imagine being married at 15 or 16. The worst part of it was that typically the person that they were set up with was a male, but this male already had to have his education, have his job, and so on. So a lot of the people that they married were in their like mid 30s, late 40s. So we'll have like a 40-year-old marrying a 15-year-old, which sounds kind of disgusting in my point of view, but that was very common during this time frame. Okay, so the duties of a woman really revolved around that household. So, keeping the house, tending to the children, and so on. If people were poor, however, all right, they also worked in the fields and in the marketplace to get by. The rich, on the other hand, rarely left home, except for like festivals that they would attend or funerals. Because in Athens, if an Athenian woman was to leave her house, she had to be accompanied by a male. So she wasn't allowed to go out in public all by herself, which sounds really strange. All right, so Athenian women really stayed in the home. Some societies in the world actually still do this, okay, that they have to have that male accompanying them into public. Now, there were a few women that enjoyed different things, okay? So if we look at women in Athens, most of them did learn how to read because of their moms. They learned how to play music, but they never attended education. They didn't actually go to school. Women were not allowed to participate in politics or own property. So these are very traditional roles because in Athens and many other city-states at this time, it was believed that a woman just could not get by herself. She had to have that male. Males were much more superior and knowledgeable than a woman. Okay, and now if we looked at some women there, and we're going to look at this person in the statue, some had more freedom. Now these are not Athens women though. Okay, foreigners, people who come from other lands, were regarded differently because they were not Athenian women. Okay, so some of those foreigners were actually given more freedoms. For example, the woman in the statue, her name was Aspasia. Aspasia came into Athens and she was known for her intelligence. She was very educated. Okay, she was really good at public speaking. Okay, to the point that Pericles is going to say, this lady is good. She knows how to public speak. She needs to teach our men how to do the same things that she is. So Pericles is actually going to hire her on to work, okay, in his government teaching public speaking to males. So that's very unlike most women during this time frame. Another part of Athens' life, and this is going to apply to all city-states at this time, slavery is going to be extremely common. Okay, so slavery is going to be common in all ancient civilizations, and the slave trade is going to start, and so forth. So it was very common for any Athenian home, whether rich or poor, that they had at least one slave. Okay, so the more wealthy you were, the more slaves that you would have, which makes sense. Okay, now most of the slaves that they had were from the prisoners of war. So some of them were Greek, some of them were non-Greek. Okay, so if they won battles, a lot of those people from the enemy nation became prisoners of war, and then they became the slaves of these households. Now the treatment of slaves varied. Some households treated their slaves really good. Sometimes they gave them pay to work off their slavery and was able to buy their freedom. Others treated their slaves like we know slavery, very cruel, that these people were not actually human beings. Okay, the number of slaves that Athens had actually really helped their economy. Okay, remember, economy is dealing with jobs and things that you are buying and selling and so on. So if we look at Athens' economy at this time, okay, Athens' economy is going to focus on farming, as most city-states did at this time. Since we have that Mediterranean climate, they're going to grow grapes and olives, make olive oil, make wine, and so on. Okay, the problem with Athens was that their land space was kind of small for their growing population. All right, so farmers weren't able to keep up with the people that were there, forcing Athens to import food from other areas. That's one of the things that even today's world you don't want to have to do. During this time, Athens, we know they have a large navy, but now they're also going to focus on building these really large supply ships to help with trade. Okay, so Athens is going to lead the world in trade during this time period. So they're going to have the most trade coming from their area. Remember, they are the #1 city-state in Greece, the cultural center, the economic center, and so forth. Okay, so if we look at this time, okay, Athens realizes that Greece, the only way that they're going to hold together is based on what they did against Persia. So they know that their survival is based on cooperation. So all the city-states do have to cooperate in order to maintain their area. Okay, so if we look at this area. The Persian Empire is now under control of Alexander the Great. Okay, so that's still a threat, okay, because what if Alexander the Great decides to take over Greece? So they decided to form something called the Delian League, and their home base was a place called Delos. Okay, the Delian League was a protective group. It had members of every city-state, okay, that would speak on the city-state's behalf, okay, and be able to send troops in order to fend off invasion if need be. Okay, Athens at this time is going to provide most soldiers and sailors for this league. The other city-states, for the most part, provided ships and money. Okay, so at this time they were successful in driving like the rest of those Persian soldiers out of the Greek territory. So remember, they were able to get Anatolia back and so on. So if we look at the map, Greece is like the colored areas minus the green. So they do own that yellow piece of land on the coastline there. So as we look at this, what's going to happen is that Delian League is going to fail, okay? And the reason it's going to fail is because Athens all of a sudden gets kind of greedy. So Athens is going to get a big head over this, right? They're the greatest. They're the number one. And what's going to happen is they're going to take advantage of those other city-states. So Athens is going to take the lead, and they're going to be too great. Okay, so Athens is going to use their power to control those other city-states. Pericles is going to start demanding things from the other city-states, which doesn't make any sense because Pericles was only the ruler of Athens. He was not the ruler of Sparta or any other city-states there. Okay, so he's going to start demanding these other city-states to pay him taxes, demand loyalty, and so forth. And all of these things are going to cause that Delian League to fail. And it's also going to start making these other city-states to say, what's going on? We're no longer functioning as a group. Athens is functioning more like a kingdom, and they're the king. Okay, and they're not going to be okay with this. During this time, they're going to move the center of the treasury of their money for these city-states, okay, to Athens. They're going to force people to use their money, their measurements, okay, and these other city-states are going to begin to question, most notably Sparta, which is also still very powerful during this time. And we're going to pick up with how this disagreement between city-states evolves into a war.